Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Group 6. We will explain about teaching listening. What is listening? Listening is the ability to identify and understand what others are saying. This involves understanding a speaker's accent or pronunciation, his grammar and his vocabulary, and grasping his meaning. Okay, next, an interactive model of listening comprehension. The following 8 processes, according to Clark and Richards, are all involved in listening comprehension. Number 1, the hearer process what is called raw speech and holds an image of it in short-term memory. This image consists of the constituent phrase, clause, cohesive markers, intonation, and stress patterns of a stream of speech. Number 2, the hearer determines the type of speech event that is being processed. The hearer must, for example, ascertain whether this is conversation, a speech, a radio broadcast, and then appropriately color the interpretation of the perceived message. Number 3, the hearer infers the objective of the speaker through consideration of the type of speech event, the context, and content. So, for example, one determines whether the speaker wishes to persuade, to request, to exchange pleasantries, to affirm, to deny, informing, and so forth. Thus, the function of the message is inferred. Number 4, the hearer recalls background information relevant to the particular context and subject matters. A lifetime of experience and knowledge are used to perform cognitive association in order to bring a plausible interpretation to the message. Number 5, the hearer assigns a literal meaning to the occurrence. This process involves a set of semantic interpretation of the surface string that the ear has perceived. Number 6, the hearer assigns an intent meaning to the occurrence. For example, the person on the bus intended to find out what time of day it was, even though the literal meaning did not directly convey the message. The key to human communication is the ability to match perceived meaning with intended meaning. Number 7, the hearer determines whether information should be retained in short-term or long-term memory. Short-term memory is a matter of a few seconds, for example, in contexts that simply call for quick oral response from the hearer. Long-term memory is more common when, say, you are processing information in a lecture. There are, of course, many points in between. Number 8, the hearer deletes the forms in which the message was originally received. You have the need to retain the short cognitive cluster instead the important information. Okay, based on the explanation, it can be concluded that listening comprehension process is an interactive process. Because of the learning listening process need an active activity, and also in the learning listening, both of the teacher and student have to participate actively. Okay, next, what make listening difficult? There are 8 factors that can make the listening process difficult. Number 1 is clustering. Clustering word is a natural process in listening comprehension. Clustering helps students pick out and comprehend manageable cluster of words rather than try to digest an entire passage. Number 2, redundancy. Spoken language, unlike most written language, has a good deal of redundancy. In conversation, we notice that replacing repetition elaboration. Such redundancy can help the hearer to process meaning by offering more time and extra information. Learners can train themselves from such redundancy by first becoming aware that not every new sentence or phrase will necessarily contain new information, and by looking for the signal of redundancy. Number 3, reduced form. Spoken language has reduced form and sentence fragments. Reduction can be phonological, morphological, syntactic, or pragmatic. Thus, reduction poses significant difficulties, especially for classroom learners who may have initially been exposed to the flow of English language. Number 4, performance variable. In spoken language, except for plain discards, hesitations for start, pause, and correction are common. There are also many ungrammatical forms and dialect difference. Native listeners are conditioned from very young to without such performance variable, whereas they can easily interfere with comprehension in second language learner. Number 5, colloquial language. Idioms, slang, reduced form, and shared cultural knowledge are all part of spoken language. The learners are usually exposed to textbooks English and need help. Colloquialities appear to the both monologues and dialogues. Number six, rate of delivery. The number and length of pause are more crucial to the comprehension than short speech. By Richards, learners need to be able to comprehend language delivered at varying rates of speed and times delivered with few pauses. Number seven, stress, rhythm, and intonation. English is a stress time language. Stress, rhythm, and intonation is the pattern are significant for interpreting question, statement, emphasis, sarcasm, endearment, insult, soliloquy, praise. Number eight, the spoken word. Number eight is interaction. The spoken word is subject to rules of interaction, negotiation, clarification, attending signal, turn taking and topic nomination, maintenance and termination. To learn to listen is also to learn, respond, and to continue a chain of listening and responding.
And now I will explain about the types of classroom listening performance. The first is reactive, requires little meaningful processing. This must be very limited, otherwise the listener's generation of meaning does not reach fruition. Focus on pronunciation. 2. Intensive. The purpose of this technique is to focus on component of discourse, include the bottom-up skills. Example, student listen for clues. The teacher repeats a record or a sentence several times. The teacher asks students to listen to a sentence or a longer stretch of discourse. The three, responsive. Short stretch of the teacher language designed to elicit immediate response. The student task is to process the teacher talk and respond a proper reply. Example, asking question, giving comment, seeking clarification, checking comprehension. 4. Selective. Task of the student is not to process everything that was said, but rather to scan material selectively for certain information. Example, speech, media broadcasts, stories and anecdotes, conversation in which learner or eavesdrops. 5. Extensive. Aims to develop a top-down global understanding of spoken language. Require the student to invoke other interactive skills for full comprehension. Top-down refers to the use of background knowledge in understanding the meaning of music. 6. Interactive. The listening performance must be intricately integrated with speaking and perhaps other skills in the authentic give and take of communicative interchange. Interactive listening includes all five of above types as learners actively participate in discussion, debates, conversation, role plays, and other pair and group works. Principle for designing listening technique. First, focus on listening in an integrated skill course. It is important to create effective listening techniques which requires the attention of the student to focus on spoken language. Many times we believe the students are experiencing listening skills through observing the teacher and listening to instruction. This, however, doesn't always translate to intake and the student will not see the value of listening this way. 2. Use techniques that are intrinsically motivating. Teachers should try appealing to the listener's personal interests and goals. It is important to understand the background of your student and to intake account their experience and interests. However, remember that the cultural background can be both facilitating and interfering in the process of listening. Also remember all students may not have the same background, so finding a common ground may be necessary. 3. Utilize authentic language and context. Having authentic language and real-world logs enables students to see the relevance of classroom activity to their long-term communicative goals. If you introduce natural text rather than script and artificial material, students will be more readily dive into the activity. 4. Carefully consider the form of listener response. It is difficult to identify and evaluate comprehension from listening activities. We can only infer what has been comprehended through student offered verbal or nonverbal response to speech. It is therefore important for teachers to design techniques in such a way that students' response indicate whether or not their comprehension has been correct. 5. Encourage the development of listening strategies. Many students don't understand how to listen. They listen to words but don't know what it means to actively listen and are therefore in need of listening skills which extend beyond the classroom. The key for teachers is to help the student develop their own overall strategic competence or strategies for effective listening. The student could then significantly improve their chance for success learning. 6. Include both bottom-up and top-down listening techniques. There are two main types of processing in listening and reading comprehension. Bottom-up processing process from sound to words to grammatical relationship to lexical meaning to final message. Top-down techniques are more concerned with the activation of background information, with deriving meaning, with global understanding, and with the interpretation of a text. And then tips of success teaching listening. The first, listen in pairs. Trying having students do the task in pairs. Each pair use only one book. That way, learners help each other by pointing out what they understand rather than worrying about what they miss. 2. Do something physical. If a particular listening segment is very difficult, pick a specific item, have students close their books. Then play the audiogram, have the student do a physical action such as tapping their desk or raising their hand each time they hear the target item. The task is focused enough that most of learners can accomplish it. The physical action gives immediate feedback and support to learners who miss it on the audiogram. 3. Choose an appropriate level of support. After students have heard a segment, check it as a group. Write an answer on the board, then play the audiogram again. Learners choose their own level of support. Those who basically understood close their eyes and imagine the conversation. Those who understood look at their books and try to hear the items mentioned. 4. Listen a month later. If your student found a particular segment very challenging, go back after a month or two and play it again. They will usually find it much easier than when they heard it all the first time. It helps students see their own progress. 5. Do not look audio script. Generally, do not give students the audio script. It reinforces word and sentence level bottom-up processing and reinforces their myth and that learners cannot understand meaning without catching everything they hear.